Virginia looked up as three more uniformed policemen came in, followed by two men in suits. The men all looked at her, then two of the men in uniforms and one of the men in a suit went into the bathroom. The third uniformed officer started looking around the rest of the suite while the other man came over to them. "I'm Art Morrison, Chief Detective of Homicide," he said. "So you're Virginia. My kid was at your concert last night, said it was totally awesome and a few other things. What happened to Frankie?" Virginia looked up at him in surprise, then said, "How the hell should I know what happened to Frankie? You can see that someone who didn't like him very much obviously did a number on him. I don't know what happened or who did it or how he got there or how long he's been there. I don't even know what time it is or how I got here, for that matter." She looked at him again with that same surprised look and said, "Can you ask me these questions? Am I supposed to answer them?" Detective Morrison laughed and replied, "I can ask you anything except your age, race, religion, political affiliation, or sexual preference. You can be cooperative and talk to me here, or I can arrange a guided tour of police headquarters and you can talk to me there, with your lawyer present, if you want." He looked up at Fred and said to Virginia, "Who is this guy?" "I'm Fred Forelli, the manager on duty last night. I heard the screams. Yes, clear down at the desk. I heard her screaming, and I knew something was wrong. I told the clerk to call 911, and I came right up with the pass keys. The door was locked, and all the bolts were on. I had one heck of a time getting in. I didn't touch anything but her, brought her out here to calm her down a little, then helped her back to the bathroom to barf and get her some water." Detective Morrison looked at him approvingly and nodded, then turned and said, "Now why don't you tell me what happened, Virginia? Start at the beginning and tell me the whole story. We can talk here if you want, or we can go downtown. Which would you prefer?" The detective sat quietly, waiting for her answer. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Virginia said quietly, "I don't know what happened. I honestly don't. I have nothing to hide and will gladly tell you everything I know, but I really don't know anything." She put her hands to her head and rubbed her eyes, and looked back at the clock at the table. "My God, it's 8 o'clock. Is that in the morning?" "Yes, it is, Virginia," said the detective. "It was just after 6:30 when we got the call at the station. Another 15 minutes before they called me, and I got here as fast as I could. Now, why don't you start at the beginning? Tell me whatever you can remember. We'd like to get to the bottom of this as soon as possible, and I'm sure you would like that too, wouldn't you?" Virginia sighed deeply, then said, "I really have been tired lately, and I wanted some time off. Every time I talk to Marty or Frankie about a break, they'd say, 'Soon, baby, soon. Right now we're doing so good. We're on a roll.' Last night I felt like I just couldn't go on, and I listened to those people screaming, and all I could think of was bread and circuses. That's all this is. I messed up the first number, but then after I got started, I was okay and finished the act. Then Frankie came backstage just screaming at me, and Marty was shouting at me, and the band was giving me dirty looks, and I just yelled at Frankie to get out of my life forever. I told him to drop dead, but I didn't mean that literally. Then Marty came into my dressing room. We had a big fight, and he told me he'd been stealing my money and that it's all gone. He paid the bills and gave us all a salary, and he was supposed to be investing the rest, but he took it all and said no one could ever prove it or find it." She stopped and took a deep breath, then stated flatly, "And that's all I remember until he came in and helped me." She pointed at Fred and smiled wanly. "I guess I should say thanks. I do appreciate it. It was pretty awful." Putting her hands to her mouth in a gesture of despair, Virginia said, "I guess I'm in pretty deep trouble, aren't I, Detective? I mean, here's my boyfriend dead in the bathtub of our hotel suite. I find the body, and I don't remember anything from roughly 11 p.m. until then. I do know this much, though, and that's this. I did not do this to Frankie. I could never kill anyone, certainly not in that way. I was raised in a good Christian home, and no matter what I've done with my life, was beginning to realize how far I'd traveled from the way I was brought up to live. My exact feelings backstage earlier tonight. I guess that was last night, was that I was not brought up to behave like this. Maybe this is a sign from God to straighten up and fly right. I don't know. It does seem like God could have been a little subtler, and I still would have gotten the message, though, doesn't it?" She spread her hands in front of her and shrugged her shoulders in a gesture of futility. Looking at her through narrowed eyes, the detective thought, wow, what a story. If it's true, there's a lot more to her than one would give her credit for, and if it's not, you still have to give her credit for one hell of a good imagination, not to mention thinking fast on her feet. I have to ask you to stay right here until we do some more investigation. There are going to be a lot of people who don't believe you in the next few days. Will undoubtedly be rough for you. We have to ask a lot of questions of a lot of people. I think probably the first thing we'd better do is find Marty and talk to him, as well as the rest of the band. Are they staying here or somewhere else? Virginia nodded wordlessly, and Fred volunteered to get their room numbers for him. Don't go anywhere, he repeated to Virginia, and it might be a good idea to call some close friend or relative to come and be here with you. Virginia nodded again, looking down at herself. She blushed faintly. I didn't realize I've been sitting here all this time in my nightgown. Is it okay if I go put something else on? At Art's nod, she nodded. I'll get my address book and call my mom. They just moved and I don't know their new number yet. As upset as I am, I can't think of the old one either, though. Fred was still sitting on the couch beside her and he patted her arm gently. Don't worry, everything will work out for the best. I'm sorry about Frankie, but whoever did this will be brought to justice. He looked at the policeman and continued, if it's okay, I'll call my wife to come over and be here with her. She can keep her company and give her some comfort until someone from her family gets here. My wife lost a member of her family to a violent death and could give Virginia some help in dealing with that aspect of this. That's a good idea. Art reached toward the shirt pocket again and then shrugged. Why don't you do that while Virginia dresses and I check and see how they're progressing in there? Oh, and get me all the room numbers for the rest of this group while you're at it. One of the uniformed members came into the room just then and said, Can you come in here for a minute, Art? The two of them went into the bathroom as Fred went out the door and Virginia went to the bedroom.